What is the purpose of an Orisha initiation, specifically a water Orisha? And why do certain spiritualists call it initiation? In order for us to understand the purpose of an Orisha initiation, we need to first of all have a good understanding of what it entails. Before we get into that, let's quickly explain why certain spiritualists call it an initiation. The reason why they call it that is because you're being initiated into a closed practice. When a priestess or a priest of the Orishas says that you need to get your initiations done after doing a divination, they are not saying that they're initiating you into the Orisha. They're not saying that they're initiating you into Olokun, into Yemoja, into Osun, into Mami Wata. As a child of Olokun, as a child of the water Orishas, you are born carrying their energies. You do not need to be initiated into these energies. What they're saying is that they're initiating you into a closed practice through which these energies are being venerated and acknowledged. Now, if you are going to a Yoruba priestess or priest, for example, then that means you are being initiated or introduced to Isheshe, which is the Yoruba way of venerating and acknowledging the Orishas. If it is being done by an adult priestess, then you are being initiated or introduced to the Edo way of acknowledging and venerating these divinities. If it is being done by a priestess from Togo or Benin Republic, for example, then you are being introduced to or initiated into Vodun. So when a priest or priestess says that you need to get your initiations done, that they're going to initiate you, it does not mean that they're initiating you into the Orisha. They're initiating you into a closed practice, a particular closed practice through which the Orishas are being venerated and acknowledged. Okay? They understand that you do not need to be initiated into a particular divinity or Orisha, because as a child of that Orisha, as a child of the water, as a child of Olokun, Yemoja, Osun, Mami Wata, you do not need to be initiated into Olokun. You do not need to be initiated into Yemoja. You're being initiated or introduced to a closed practice through which these divinities, these Orishas, are being venerated. You're being introduced into a structured practice through which they're being, venerated. Now, what does a water Orisha initiation entail? It entails cleansing, dancing, water visits, and so much more. Now, let's break this down even further. When you consult a water priestess or priest, and it is revealed through divination that an initiation needs to be done for you, depending on the particular divinity, depending on a lot of things, the oracle may suggest a 7-day ceremony. It could be up to 14 days, it could be 21 days. For most people, it's usually a 7-day ceremony that is suggested or required, right? So during that 7, 14, 21-day ceremony, there is a lot involved. There is cleansing, there is grounding, there is water visits, okay? You're paying visits to the water to give offerings, to pay your respect, to acknowledge and venerate the water and the divinities of the water, right? Now, let's talk about cleansing. During that 7, 14, or 21-day ceremony, you're being cleansed with different herbs, roots. You're being cleansed with native chalk. Native chalk represents peace. It represents harmony. It's healing, you know? So you're being cleansed throughout that process. You're being grounded. right? So cleansing is something that takes place during water initiations. Another thing that happens is dancing. You're dancing to live drums, live music. During that process, you are releasing so many things. There's healing that takes place during that dancing part of it. You know, you're not just dancing, there's no choreography, it's not a performance, right? It's organic. There's no choreography, there's nothing like Olokun dance classes or Mami Wata dance classes. There's nothing like that. So you're dancing, you're releasing a lot of things, you're really putting yourself in a position to channel these energies. Essentially, that's what the dancing is for. It's not a performative dance, it's organic. It is done so you can channel those energies. The best way, the easiest way to channel water energies is through music, through dance, through singing. So there's a lot of dancing involved in that process so that you can channel those energies. So we talked about cleansing, we talked about dancing. Another thing that is involved in that initiation process, one more thing, very important thing that it entails is an altar. During that process, an altar is being set up for you. They are using different items that represent the energies of those divinities to set up an altar for you. And that altar is consecrated. It's being consecrated during that process. During a water initiation like Olokun, Mami Wata, Yemoja, Osun, the most important thing is that pot or those pots, depending. Some people, their altar has one pot, two, three, four pots. Doesn't matter. But there is at least one pot. So that altar is being set up with water from the body of water that you visit during that initiation. And that water is not just water from the river, right? It now contains the energy of that divinity that you are venerating, that you are acknowledging, whether it is Olokun, Yemoja, Osun, Mami Wata, right? Other things will be placed on that altar, but the most important thing is that pot or those pots, right? That's the most important thing. If we're talking about an Olokun altar, you're going to see a lot of native chalk, large, medium-sized, small, different kinds of native chalk. You're going to see that. You're going to see that on an Olokun altar because Olokun represents peace, harmony, right? And these are things that native chalk also represents. You're going to see cowries. Cowries represent wealth. Olokun is the god and goddess of wealth. Olokun is the parent of Aje Olokun, the goddess of wealth. So you're going to see cowrie shells, you're going to see seashells, you're going to see coins on an Olokun altar, right? Things that represent that energy. On a Mami Wata altar, you're typically going to see cosmetics. You'll see powder, you'll see perfume, you'll see a depiction of Mami Wata, right? You'll see all kinds of things. You'll also see cowrie shells, seashells, coins, and things of that nature. Mami Wata represents beauty, happiness, right? Joy. Also wealth. She's a goddess of fertility. She's a goddess of all things good and beautiful, right? So you'll see beautiful things on a Mami Wata altar. You'll see flowers, you'll see seashells, you'll see coins, pearls, you'll see powder, perfume. These are all things that are aligned with the energy, with that energy. Things that represent beauty, love, attraction, happiness, right? So that is the summary of it all. An Orisha, a water Orisha initiation involves cleansing. It entails dancing, not just for the sake of it, but to channel those energies. And it entails water visits, and at the end, an altar that is set up for you so that you have a physical place where you can channel and summon those energies. You have a physical space in your house where you can channel and summon those energies. It does not mean that you cannot summon those energies from anywhere. You could be on Mount Everest, you could be in the desert and still channel those energies. Don't get it twisted. But the essence of an altar is so you have a physical space where you can channel those energies. It is very grounding to have an altar because an altar needs to be maintained. You have to take care of it, right? So it can be a very grounding experience to have an altar. It's grounding. It's a way of acknowledging them as well. It's the highest form of respect for you to set up a physical space in your house within this realm where you can go and channel them, right? The altar is for them and it's also for you. And that pot of water, right, is essentially a portal. It is a link to the water. So if you have yourself a proper Olokun altar with that is done correctly with that pot, then what that means is that pot is a portal to different bodies of water. As let's remember that Olokun is the goddess and god of the waters, all bodies of water. Olokun is the ruler of all bodies of water. So when you have an Olokun pot, you have yourself a portal, a link to different bodies of water. You have a link to Olokun. That way, you don't always have to go to the river. You know, there's river at home. There's sea at home, essentially. You don't always have to go to the river anymore. You can just give your offerings at your altar. And it will be linked to the river, to the sea, to whatever. That is the purpose of the altar. That is the purpose of a water initiation. There's cleansing, there's grounding, and finally there's an altar being set up for you, which that altar essentially is a link to the water. It's a portal. Okay? So that is the summary of it all. That is the purpose of an initiation. There's a lot that goes on during that process. A lot of things get revealed. The Orishas, during the initiation, they speak. They say a lot of things. They reveal a lot of things. Things that you may have ignored for years, for decades, they will come up to the surface. Things that you have not healed from, they will all come up to the surface so that you can finally address those things. So it's not just a process that entails unnecessary dancing and water visits and all these things. Everything that's being done during that initiation process has a purpose. Those herbs that are being used to bathe you, you don't know what those herbs are doing for you. They are stripping away years of gathered pain and trauma that has been stored in the body physically. So a water initiation, an Orisha initiation has a purpose. Our ancestors created this process so we could have a structured way of connecting with our Orishas, with the divinities. The full initiation process exists so that you are not being given an altar, without any proper cleansing or grounding or education, right? On the divinities, okay? During this process, if it is being done by the right person, by a true water priest or priestess, they will teach you the basics, at least the basic things that you need to know to care for your altar, the very basics, right? It's not a process that entails random things. Nothing is random. Nothing about it is random. Everything that it entails has a purpose. That is the reason for the initiation process. It's a very beautiful practice, and not everyone needs it. But if it is revealed through divination that you are a child of Olokun, Yemoja, Mami, Wata, Osun, and it states that you need to get initiated, then why argue?